Good
Shabbat
Shabbos.
shalom. Good Shabbos.
Baruchim habaim. Welcome. L'shul. Good Shabbos. You may have noticed I'm not the rabbi. Now, if you didn't notice that, okay, I've got some glasses you can wear. But we're going to start on page 120 for the candle blessing, and then we're going to immediately go into the Kiddush. So we're going to call both of the greens up, and we're going to do this the more traditional, old-fashioned way, the way it is in the book.
I support you in that.
That means one time getting up, not two. Page 120, 120.
Got it?
Yeah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
All right, we'll go straight. Don't go anywhere,
We're
Russ.
doing the Kiddush now.
We're going straight to the Kiddush on page 123.
Go ahead. I'll follow you.
Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinkilanu zikaron le'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila le'mikraye chodesh zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim kivanu v'charta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim ve'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon Inchaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechadesh HaShabbat. Amen. L'chaim.
L'chaim. You want to take that to go?
Now the cantor, Brendan, will now go with Ma Yafeh Hayom on page 128.
128. Ma yafeh hayom, Shabbat shalom. Ma yafeh hayom, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.
How lovely today is. Shabbat Shalom. We're on page 140 now. 140. Mizmor shir le'yom hashabbat טוב להדות לאדוני, וזמר לשמך עליון, להגיד בבוקר חסדך, ואמונתך בלילות, עלי עשור ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון בכינור, עלי עשור ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון בכינור. I think I missed a line there. Lehagi babocher chasdecha. We'll get that in there too. All right. So let's read the English on the bottom of the page of 140. It is good to praise Adonai, to sing hymns to your name, O Most High, to proclaim your steadfast love at daybreak, your faithfulness each night, with a 10-stringed harp, with voice and lyre together. You have gladdened me by your deeds, Adonai. I shout for joy at your handiwork. How great are your works, Adonai! How very subtle your designs! A brute cannot know, a fool cannot understand this. The righteous bloom like a date palm. They thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Adonai, they flourish in the courts of our God. In old age they still produce fruit. They are full of sap and freshness, attesting that Adonai is upright, my rock in whom there is no wrong. We now turn to page 142, a song that we generally sing in the evenings on Shabbat before dinner, after candle lighting. Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Boachem leshalom, Malachei hashalom, Malachei elyon. Mi melech malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem leshalom, Malachei hashalom, Malachei elyon. Mi melech malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Peace be to you, O ministering angels, messengers of the Most High, Majesty of majesties, Holy One of blessing. Enter in peace, bless me with peace, depart in peace. Page 144. This is the Chatzi Kaddish, which literally means half Kaddish. Yitkedah ve'yitkedash Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Be'alma divrach harute, be'amlich malchute, b'chayechon, uvyomechon, uvchayedecho beit Yisrael, ba'agala, uvizman kariv, b'moru. Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevarach, le'olam u'lo me'omaya,
Yitbarach.
Yitbarak, v'yishtabak, v'yitparar, v'yitramam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shemei dekudashah,
Brichu.
leila min kol birchata, v'shirata, tushbechata, v'nechemata, damiran be'ama, v'imaru. Amen. We now turn to page 146 for the Baruch Hu. Please rise.
Yai, la, 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 la. Yai, la, 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 la. Yai, la, 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 la. Yai, la, 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 la. Yai, la, 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 la. Yai, la, 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 la. Yai, la, 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 la. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach. HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
We are now on page 148. You may be seated. And in the English, together, blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Zevaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Baruch atah Adonai HaMa'ariv Aravim.
Amen.
We now turn to page 152, and we will chant the Shema, the very first two lines of the Shema, and Cantor has a special song tonight. It's the Debbie Friedman version of the Shema and the English Ve'ahavta. So when we're finished with the pages 152 and 153, then our Cantor will take over.
And it's from an older English translation, so so nobody gets stunned when the English translation is different.
So you may stand. Shema
Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed.
You may be seated.
You shall love the eternal God with all your heart,
With all your heart,
with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words which I command you this day shall be upon your heart, shall be upon your heart.
shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up, and when you rise up. You shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be a symbol before your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates, and on your gates, that you may remember and do all my commandments, and be holy to your God, to your God, to your God.
That was beautiful, Brendan. That will also be the subject of Akev, the Parshat, tonight. So, but for right now, we're going to turn to page 160. We're going to continue with this musical delight, the Hashkivenu. Hashkivenu, of course, is where we're actually asking God to lie us down in peace and to bring us back up to life in the morning.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom B'hamidenu Shomreinu leChaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom B'hamidenu Shomreinu leChaim. Ushmor tzedkenu uvoreinu lechayim u'shalom me'ata ve'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom B'hamidenu Shomreinu leChaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leShalom B'hamidenu Shomreinu leChaim.
Beautiful. Page 164, the Tefillah, please stand. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agita hilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, Melech Ozer u'Moshiach u'Magen. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham v'Satzara. All right, we're skipping over now to 176. 176, and you may be seated. You may be seated. All right, so, Modim anachnu lak. In the English, we acknowledge with thanks that you are Adonai, our God, and the God of our ancestors forever. You are the rock of our lives and the shield of our salvation in every generation. Let us thank you and praise you for our lives which are in your hand, for our souls which are in your care, for your miracles that we experience every day, and for your wondrous deeds and favors at every time of day, evening, morning, and noon. O good one, whose mercies never end, O compassionate one, whose kindness never fails, we forever put our hope in you. Page 371. 371. It's at this point that we do prayers of healing for those on our list and for those who you mention as we go through this. But our Mishaberach list I will mention in a minute, but initially I will just say Mishaberach Avotenu ve'imotenu Avraham Yitzchak ve'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel ve'Leah hu yevareket hacholim. And here are the names: Malka Chol, Carmen Chase, Fred Delmonico, Neil Erickson, Roger Friedman, Seth Gallitzer, Perry Graves, Paul Hinkle, Bob and Sidney Califf, Eric Leitz, Mary Moore, Barbara Morgenstern, Danny Moss, A.J. Packer, Vivian Parker, Don Pauls, Lupi Perez, Len Richter, Steve and Paula Schutera, Joe Scraper, Liz Turney, Tom Van Cleek, Jesse Williams. Do we have other individuals?
Mark Kathler. AJ Clemens.
Linda Jeffrey. Nicole Spacek. Bill Schaefer.
Roy Murray,
Deborah Elman Dolan and Leif Cohen.
Shoshana bat Avraham v'Sara.
okay. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit. And let us say, Amen.
Amen.
And the cantor is going to go with the Debbie Friedman version.
Misheberach Avotenu Makor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imotenu makor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
And now it's time for the Devar Torah, and it's a long one. So I don't want to disappoint anybody who might want to might be thinking that we're out of here in 10 minutes. I'm sorry. The parsha for this Shabbos is Akev. And last year I had the privilege of being the lay leader during this same Parshat Akev. And so this year I have the privilege of it once again. Now Parshat Akev is the 46th weekly Torah portion in the annual Jewish cycle. It covers Devarim, or as we know in English, Deuteronomy, chapter 7, verse 12 through chapter 11, verse 25. It primarily features Moses continuing his farewell address to the Israelites, which Frana started last week, promising them prosperity in the promised land on the condition of their continued obedience to God's commandments. A key theme of this parshat is the reward of obedience. The name Akev translates literally to heel in Hebrew, but it idiomatically is interpreted as follow. Moses promises that if the people follow God's laws, God will uphold his covenant. He will grant material and spiritual blessings. Those of you who know Hebrew, la'akov, okay, Akev, it's the same root. So that's where the heel and follow come from. So God will uphold his covenant and grant material and spiritual blessings. And the portion contains a beautiful glowing description of the land of Israel, characterizing it as a land flowing with milk and honey, abundant in water, rich in agricultural produce. But the Parsha also talks about the danger of arrogance. Moses explicitly warns the Israelites against becoming haughty or taking credit for their own success when they settle into wealth and prosperity. They're reminded that it is by God's power and due to the idolatry of the native inhabitants that they are inheriting the land. So Moses, to keep the nation humble, recaps their history and reminds them of their misdeeds during their wilderness years, most notably the incident of the golden calf. And the portion concludes with the well-known Vehaya im Shemoah passage, which becomes the second paragraph of the daily Shema prayer, which is the second part of the Ve'ahavta. The Ve'ahavta is actually the first part. This passage details the consequences of obeying God versus the dangers of straying toward idolatry or departing from holiness. Now, last year, I cited Rabbi Jonathan Sachs' article on what happens to civilizations that fail to transmit their traditions and fail to teach the rules to subsequent generations. Those civilizations weaken and crumble. That was Moses' message to the Israelites and to us, according to Rabbi Sachs. This year, I want to take that lesson one step further and ask, what happens when we Jews fail to transmit our rules to the next generation? In Akev, Moses describes the blessings that God will bestow on the Israelites if they follow God's law, and the punishments they will encounter if they disobey. And in Akev, as I mentioned, the Parsha contains the second part of the Shema. It's not in our Reform Siddur, but what it indicates is there are consequences for our failures. And so I'm going to read part of it in Hebrew, but mostly in English translation. This is what the second part of the Shema says. Ve'ayha im shemoa tishma'u el mitzvotai asher anochi metzaveh etkem hayom le'ahava et Adonai Elohechem. And it will be, if you will diligently obey my commandments, which I enjoin upon you this day, which I command upon you this day, to love the Lord your God and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. I will give rain for your land at the proper time. the early rain and the late rain. You will gather in your grain, your wine, and your oil. I will give grass in your fields for your cattle. You will eat and be satisfied. Take care lest your heart be lured away, and you turn astray, and worship alien gods, and bow down to them. For then the Lord's wrath will flare up against you, and he will close the heavens so that there'll be no rain, and the earth will not yield its produce, and you will swiftly perish from the good land which the Lord gives you. Therefore, place these words of mine upon your heart and upon your soul, and bind them for a sign on your hand, and they shall be a reminder between your eyes. And you shall teach them to your children to speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk on the road, when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates, so that your days and the days of your children may be prolonged on the land which the Lord swore to your fathers to give to them, for as long as the heavens are above the earth. Some of this is contained in the first part of the Ve'ahavta that you're familiar with. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel and tell them to make for themselves fringes on the corner of their garments throughout their generations, and to attach a thread of blue on the fringe of each corner. They shall be to you as tzitzit, and you shall look upon them and remember all the commandments of the Lord and fulfill them. And you will not follow after your heart and after your eyes by which you go astray, so that you may remember and fulfill all my commandments and be holy to your God. I, the Lord, am your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I, the Lord, am your God, Emet. So this is where we get the practice of wearing a talit, which contains the tzitzit, which I just mentioned, traditionally worn at the morning services and during daylight hours at home while praying, to remind us to fulfill the commandments, the mitzvot. We also derive from the Shema, as Freda mentioned last week, the practice of placing tefillin over our heart by binding them on our arm and our hand, and placing totafot as a reminder on our head, affixed above our eyes. What are we reminding ourselves to do? To follow God's mitzvot, his commandments. These ritualistic practices reinforce the need to follow God's rules. And I myself need a lot of reminding, since I'm imperfect. And if there's any question about that, you can talk to my wife and my son. I'd be happy to actually affirm what I said. Now, can you follow the rest of God's rules without these reminders? Yes. But if you are reminded on a daily basis of a thing, you are more likely to do that thing. It's human nature. So what are the consequences of failing to follow God's laws? Well, Akev talks about the consequences to the Israelites, but we modern Jews have consequences too. When we fail to pass on our traditions and the need to obey God's laws to our children, they cannot pass it on to the next generation. When we don't educate ourselves on Jewish texts and tradition and don't follow the rules ourselves, we are a model for non-compliance to the next generation. Of course, since you are here sitting in shul on Shabbos, you're not the people that necessarily need to hear this. The consequences of failing to teach the next generation of the primacy of the land of Israel, of Eretz Israel, to Jewish religious practice and doctrine is being felt today. Some Jews are unable to respond to the false claims that the Jewish people have no historical basis in the land of Israel. Others, lacking knowledge of Torah or their own traditions, give active support to groups who make such false claims. Still others, claiming purported knowledge of Torah, ignore righteousness and justice. They ignore tzedek and mishpat, while claiming that tikkun olam, repair of the world, requires that we don't oppose those who, like Amalek, would eliminate us and have made clear their desire to do so. Some of these groups act as if self-defense is not permitted. Well, the commandment is lo tirtzach, thou shalt not murder. No murder. The commandment is not, thou shalt not kill. So this fundamental misconstruction gives support to the anti-Semites who claim that the only majority Jewish country in the world doesn't have a right to defend itself or to exist. So yes, there are adverse consequences when Jews fail to understand the commandments, the rules, the traditions, and the doctrines of their own religion. And as many of you know, on October 7, 2023, 33 Harvard student groups signed a statement deeming Israel, quote, entirely responsible and the only one to blame, end quote, for Hamas's massacre of the Jews. Yet, groups like the so-called Jewish Voices for Peace and Not in Our Name followed this up and supported Hamas with demonstrations. As I understand the concept of Jewish peoplehood, I would not wrap myself up in a religious mantle with a tallit and keffiyeh and purport to support these Hamas murderers as a Jew. If I did so, I think I would be taking the Lord's name in vain and bearing false witness against my fellow Jews and ignoring the Jewish concepts of justice and righteousness, allowing for self-defense. Now, some of these groups claiming religious affiliation are political and some are non-theistic in nature, meaning they don't require belief in God. So some may not be reading Parshat Akev today, or saying the Shema, or acknowledging that the Lord is our God, or even that any of God's laws are binding on them. And, in fact, some Jews have even, as I say, slang, drunk the Kool-Aid, that Israel has engaged in a genocide in Gaza. The term genocide was coined after the Holocaust to refer to the intended destruction of an entire religious group, the Jews. The anti-Semites and their supporters have turned this definition on its head. If the Israelis had intended to eliminate an entire group of Arabs known as Palestinians, they would not have set aside the Gaza Strip and forced all Jews to uproot their settlements in Gaza. Indeed, it was Hamas who attempted a genocide of Jews and will not, to this day, accept any Jews living in Israel. So when Israel defended themselves by targeting Hamas fighters, hiding in schools and hospitals and civilian areas, it was not a genocide attempting to eliminate the Arab people. There are Arab citizens living in Israel, even Arab members of the Israeli Supreme Court. So if it were true that the Israelis were attempting a genocide, they have done a terrible job. Of course, it is not true, and we need to rebut those who say it is, even if they are Jews who are ignorant of the international law definition of genocide. And to give you a classic example and speak of Jews who departed from Jewish values that we didn't educate our children, I will give you the example of the Marx family. They departed from Jewish values and peoplehood, abandoned Jewish religion altogether. Karl Marx's father abandoned Judaism so he could practice law in Trier, Germany. And absent a Jewish religious background, Karl Marx wrote that religion is the, quote, opiate of the masses, end quote, resulting in an authoritarian ideology completely oppositional, completely against our commandments. Thou shalt not covet your neighbor's property. Thou shalt not steal. Recently, an architect with a Jewish background approached me at a public meeting. He asked me why I was wearing a kippah. At first I thought he was concerned for my safety, but it turned out that wasn't it. As I was explaining the fairly common custom, the minhag among Jews, that we can opt to wear it as a reminder that there's something above us greater than ourselves, I was surprised, frankly, to have to be discussing this, much less justifying my wearing of a kippah. And this person just thought that a Jew should only be wearing a kippah at a religious function. And I was somehow objectionable for standing out as a Jew at a non-religious function. Well, as I tried to explain, Jews are supposed to be a light unto the nations, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, if we keep God's covenant. And so God chose us for better or for worse to be an example. What God did not choose us to be was a people afraid to be that example. And given the recent anti-Semitism and the hostility of certain media outlets, Jews who are not well-founded in Jewish history, doctrine, and practice can be swept up and go along with the crowd. Even after hearing articles published which turn out to be falsifications and even blood libels against Israel and Jews. So, back to the Parsha, Moses tells the Israelites in Akev, be careful that you do not forget the Lord your God. Otherwise, when you eat and are satisfied, when you build fine houses, like an architect, and settle down, and when your herds and flocks grow large, and your silver and gold increase, and all you have is multiplied, then your heart will become proud, and you will forget the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You may say to yourself, my power and the strength of my own hands have produced this wealth for me. Moses went on to say, if you ever forget the Lord your God, I testify against you this day that you will surely be destroyed. So going back to Rabbi Sachs' commentary on what happens to civilizations that fail to transmit their traditions and fail to teach the rules to their subsequent generations, Rabbi Sachs says, as Moses makes clear toward the end of Devarim, in the long account of the curses that would overcome the people if they lost their spiritual bearings, Israel would find itself defeated and devastated. Only against this background can we understand the momentous project that the book of Devarim is proposing, the creation of a society capable of defeating the normal laws of the growth and decline of civilizations. How is it to be done? By each person bearing and sharing responsibility for the society as a whole, by each knowing the history of his or her people, by each individual studying and understanding the laws that govern all, by teaching their children so that they too become literate and articulate in their identity. So to Rabbi Sachs' point on teaching our children to be literate and articulate in their identity, how do we achieve this? We do have some supportive organizations like Hillel and Chabad once our students get to college, but what about before that? How do we teach our children to be literate and articulate in their identity as Jews? To help Jewish students understand and defend against the crowd chanting, from the river to the sea. How do we teach about Jewish peoplehood and Torah? Rabbi Amiel Hirsch, a prominent leader within our Reform movement at Stephen Wise Synagogue in New York City, says that there is an urgency for clarity, an urgency for courage, an urgency for moral leadership regarding the teaching of Zionism and Jewish peoplehood to our children. He says we need to stop teaching a false philosophy of Jewish universalism, which eclipses the love for Jewish people, which eclipses Ahavat Yisrael. He says we need to start teaching Jewish particularism, that there's more to teach than just Tikkun Olam. You can find weekly Torah portions and supportive information on Reform Judaism practices on their website. We can use that to do what the Shema says to teach our children, but the burden falls on us locally to teach about Jewish particularism and Zionism. We can advocate for an adherence to Jewish values and practices and the pride of being Jewish that goes along with those values and practices. Reform Judaism's origin was about making informed ethical choices in lieu of mandating halakha. The way to make an informed decision about ethical choices is to teach what those choices are, including all the rules of traditional Judaism. Those rules and ethical choices can be taught by parents, rabbis, religious schools, to educate our children what it means to be a Jew. We can send our children, our grandchildren, to summer Jewish camps, take them on trips to Israel. We can ensure that they thoroughly understand the services they will be leading on their bar and bat mitzvahs, and to read Torah. In summary, in Akev, Moses describes the blessings God will bestow on the Israelites if they follow God's laws. We modern Jews can follow God's laws and arm our children and ourselves with the knowledge of our practices, traditions, and reasons to be Jewish, and seek God's blessings bestowed upon us. Vehaya im shemoa tishma'u el mitzvotai asher anoki metzaveh etkem hayom. If you will hear and observe my commandments that I command this day. Can you hear Ratzon? All right. Okay, it's time for the announcements, Marilyn.
Good, Devar.
Thanks.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
On behalf of our Board of Directors, I want to extend a warm welcome to our guests and members. On this Shabbat, we extend our thanks to Jane and Russ Green for lighting the candles and leading the Kiddush, Doug Myers for hosting the streaming equipment, Stephanie Shatera for hosting the Oneg, and Brendan Howard for leading our music. And Norm Spiro for leading our service, doing a wonderful job. Next Friday, August 7th, please join us for this Torah Shabbat service led by Rabbi Stern. Stephanie Shatera will lead the music and Hurst Kaufman will accompany. The Shabbat service will start at 6:30. The Oneg will be potluck. For other upcoming events and other important information, please check tonight's handout, the Temple Beshalom website calendar at tbstopeka.org, the monthly bulletin, or the weekly announcement. Tonight's tzedakah will go to Project Topeka Community Food Drive. The tzedakah box is in the foyer. And before I say Shabbat Shalom, I want to remind everybody to get their memorial book information into me too. You can do it online or you can send it to the temple office. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Marilyn, I sent mine in already. I'll put it in the U.S. mail, so I'm hoping it gets here by the date. All right. All right, we're on page 586, which is the Aleinu. I'll wait till everybody gets to 586. We are going to stand, obviously. 586. Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotzer reshit, shelo asanu b'toyei haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'goralenu tefo hamonam. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. Page 591. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. All right, you may be seated. We turn to page 595. Verse 6. It is hard to sing of oneness when the world is not complete. When those who once brought wholeness to our life have gone, and naught but memory can fill the emptiness their passing leaves behind. But memory can tell us only what we were, in company with those we loved. It cannot help us find what each one of us alone must now become. Yet no one is really alone. Those who live no more echo still within our thoughts and words. And what they did is part of what we have become. We do best homage to our dead when we live our lives more fully, even in the shadow of our loss. For each of our lives is worth the life of the whole world. In each one is the breath of the ultimate one. In affirming the one, we affirm the worth of each one, whose life now ended, brought us closer to the source of life, in whose unity no one is alone, and every life finds purpose. Our thoughts now turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those, we're on page 597, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people, whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own: Charlotte Edelman, Betty Gartner, Mamie Baum, Bill Leeds, Minnie Finkelstein, Len Horwitz, Charles Noctegal, Meyer Catch. Are there any others that are commemorating a Yahrzeit? Anybody? Nobody on the Zoom? Okay. We are on page 598. And we will say the mourner's Kaddish. And you may stand if it is your custom. Yitgadav Yitkada Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Be'alma Divra Karute. Be'amlich Malpute. B'chayechon uvyomechon uvkaye de kol Beit Yisrael. Bagala uvizman kariv v'imuru. Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevarach Leolam Olameh Amaya. Yitbarak v'yishtabak v'yitpar v'yitrumam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei Dikudasha Barichu. Leilal min kol birchata v'shirata. Dush bechata v'nechemata. Damiran v'alma v'maru. Amen. Yehe shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'alcha Yisrael. V'maru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mamav. Huya aseh shalom. Aleinu v'alcha Yisrael. V'maru. Amen. Well, Cantor, I think it's time for the motzi.
Okay, is somebody cutting? We have a cutter?
Uh,
Somebody wants to do motzi?
do we have any children?
Any children under the age of bar bat mitzvah? You're standing. Does that mean you're doing the motzi? Come on.
We need professional help.
Oh, wait.
Okay. Motzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
I'll share.
Thank you.
Can I share?
Sure.
I have to leave some for my wife.
There you go. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
shalom.